We're live.
DY unleashes the innovation wave.
We're going to dive into the latest buzz of active development. Stay tuned with Mr. Know-It-All.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
So listen up. We've got a topic for you. We're gonna bring everyone up to speed as to what's happening in busy DY. I didn't realize how much was going on.
DY sells more units per year than the Sydney CBD.
It's unbelievable the volume that this little town in Northern Beaches brings to the rest of Sydney. But it's a great benchmark, if anything, as to what's the tone in the rest of the market, what's going on.
Yeah, spot on. I reckon. Any watching today, you're going to get some good outlines on what's happening in most parts of Sydney with development. And it all came out of an appointment yesterday where we were standing in a very, very high apartment in Meriton in the centre of DY. So Meriton built almost 400 units in the middle of DY, and we were on the top floor of one of the towers, and the owner was walking around pointing to all these buildings, and I just didn't shut up.
You just knew everything. It was impressive, very impressive.
And I got really excited, and I realised sort of halfway through I was visibly showing my excitement. I had to just calm down a bit. So we decided to do a show today on it.
But it's so true. There is a lot going on. I think a lot of it is a little bit under wraps to the public eye. You can't see much maybe from the street as you're driving along Pittwater Road. You sometimes don't notice it, I think, once you're in the car. But it felt like we were standing on the top of DY yesterday. And, from a bird's eye view, there's a lot. There's, a good handful of really impressive projects going up. And what amazed me is this is no small sum of money. I know everyone's talking about interest rates and cost of building, but some of these projects going up and not at a small cost.
And the costs are running as well. The building costs are running, the interest costs are running. To be honest, I think it's a really hard time for developers at the moment.
It does seem to be that way. I think build times are pushed out as well. Can we agree on that? Where initially they might have thought they'd be able to do it, in a time frame that was between this and this, it might have dragged out a little bit longer than that as well.
Yeah, big time. So let's motor through. There's 5 developments in DY. Let's motor through them and just give people a little update on how they're all going. And there's stuff in this which I think people will pull out to learn. And again, you can put that ruler across a lot of parts of Sydney. First one, Billy.
Havana, the one that everyone's talking about. Why is it taking so long? You were down at the bottom of the site.
I was at the bottom of the pit. So there used to be in DY a subway on the corner of Oaks Avenue and Pittwater Road. Havana, we pre-sold most of the units in there. So there's about 70% pre-sold, which is generally all the developer needs. They dug deep, and one of the things I explained when I was talking to the owner about what's happening in DY, and we're talking about Havana, is what people don't realise is the water table. So imagine this. Imagine if you have a pool in your backyard and you're given a bathtub, and I say to you, I want you to push this bathtub down to the water line. I want the top of the bathtub to meet the top of the water line of the pool. The pressure that you need to push that bathtub down is astonishing. And that's what developers are trying to do when they're in the ground. So what they're actually doing is there's constant, when you're on a water table, there's constant pressure from water trying to push up and out what you're building. So they're almost building like a pool in the ground, like a bathtub in the ground, and it's trying to get pushed out. So what they start to do is they start to pin the building, because it has to hold its own. It has to stay down in that ground until that building comes in on top of it. So it's quite incredible what they're doing in Havana. I think they went down 4 stories, but the piering that they sent down went down as much as 45, 50 meters down into the ground to hold that bathtub down, into that water line. So if you don't do a proper job, that's when you start getting that slab pushing back up. You start taking water. You start getting cracks in your building. So it is better to take time, monitor, and do it properly, which is what that Havana building's doing. But where a building of that size, you could actually build in about, across the road from our office, they did 130 units in 13, 14 months. Havana
Yep.
at 80 units, they could have been in and out in 12 months. These guys have been in the ground for 3 years.
Amazing. But that's that's the context behind it. I think that's important to know for a
Yep.
GY local. Now we go across the road to the old CBA site. It looks like 2 or 3 blocks, but it's actually just working on one at the moment. They've kept the facade up, so you can see some boarding at the front on the street level, and then a little bit above that, it's the old facade of the building.
Yes.
What's happening there?
So what people don't know is heritage is a consideration for some parts of Sydney, and so the government has taken a position on things that have historical significance they would like to see remain and remain unchanged. So when there's something that's heritage, and the site potentially can be developed, they often say, look, can you just leave the facade? Can you leave that piece of history behind and build around it? So the old Commonwealth Bank is a beautiful old building. Still think it should have been knocked down. But anyway, they got approved 70 odd apartments. So it was purchased by one developer for 2 odd million. It was sold for 6 odd million.
Yep.
And they got approved on it before they sold it. A build to rent model of 70 apartments. So build to rent means you can't sell them individually. These particular apartments are like boarding house style, so they're about 25 to 30 metres squared internally. So they're studios. So
Yep.
I'd expect that they're going to rent for about 500 a week, 550 a week for something like that. Pretty incredible.
Yeah. Okay. And that's council's position on trying to help affordable, rental properties come into the market and relieve a bit of stress there.
Yeah, I think our government's got some pretty good controls around that build to rent model. They want to see more accommodation, hitting the market. That's significant. I think it's a significant site because it's a landlocked site, which we spoke about yesterday. But to bring that many rentals to the market, there's no requirement for parking on that site currently. Within that current DA, it will activate at the rear at a later point. But yeah, it's pretty interesting because council's taken a position that if you're on the B-line bus and you're on transport, there's less intensity for parking to go in. So yeah, incredible.
Now, jumping up the road as we go up Fisher Road, you're over the roundabout near KFC and the fire station, the Hamptons project. That's a big old site up there.
The old Salvation Army sold their site there, and a beautiful site. DA approved for 120 odd units, I believe. Done a lot of their pre-sales as well. They're in the ground, but something that a lot of locals are talking about is that these sites are not moving at all or very quickly. So it's pretty interesting how slow some of this stuff's moving.
Yep. And then there's a couple of finished ones. There's one on the corner of Redmond Road and Francis Street as we cross the other side of Pittwood Road, and there's a couple of new stuff coming up.
Yep. The old Mr. Hummel is converted to some old offices. I believe there's about 25 apartments in there, build to rent model. so under the boarding house provisions, and they're going to be rented out. So they'll probably get that sort of 550 as well
Yeah,
a week.
awesome. So the golden question, the $1 million question is, what is council's position on new builds?
Look, the council is there for the community. They are the hand that exercises, they should be the hand that exercises what the community wants. But this takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of legacy it takes a lot of consideration. So the current pressures that we're seeing haven't filtered through to controls and changes within council. The current controls and the planning that we've got in place with council, a lot of it's legacy stuff that's been going on for 10 or 25 years within our suburb. So they're just very compliant. They're interested in exercising. If they're asked by anyone to develop, they're interested in just exercising what's under their nose and what's, the compliance that the developer has to follow. So the developers are definitely complaining. I'm dealing with so many lately. I sold DY beachfront for 11.5 and spoke to over 200 recent local developers. And I had to allow 10 minutes in the first part of every conversation to hear them express how hard it currently is in this environment to get something, to get anything developed and approved and developed. So it's a very, very tough landscape for developers. Certain people may enjoy that fact and say, whatever, which I don't like. I often saying, I feel bad for them. I was like, don't feel bad for them, but I do. These guys are supplying stock to our city, and they just can't do it in a profitable manner in most circumstances, given the compliance and the planning controls that are in place. So we're in trouble.
There you go. That's a local wrap, but it is interesting. There is stuff going on. There are projects coming out of the ground. There's another big one across the road from our office again on Delmar Parade. That'll be a big residential hub again. It's exciting.
Yeah, so that's, if you've noticed on Pittwater Road, the corner of Delmar, across the corner from our office, there's 220, 30 odd apartments that have been approved there. So they've currently gone up for pre-sale. So that's going to be another really interesting development for DY. But the way the funding is running, the cost of funding and the cost of compliance, I think a lot of these guys are certainly not ripping in and ripping out quickly. They've generally tended to be slow down all projects across the board of the Northern Beaches.
There you go. Is this something you've seen before in DY? This many projects, this long to build?
Yeah, it's not a happy story. And I have seen not happy stories in my 30-year career. You will even see the guys that are building these developments are actually quite strong on the northern in DY in particular. So I'm not worried for the future of those developments. But certainly, I think it's a huge slowdown. I know people are talking about approvals, the lack of approvals across Sydney, but I don't think we've even touched the iceberg. I think we're going into a chronic shortage of new property, given the compliance regulations and the planning controls that are in place. I think probably if they want to maintain that level of such a high degree of compliance, which is great for peace of mind that you're going to get a good building, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, they've probably got to allow more density in some of these parts of Sydney, more height to then make it economical and tip it.
Yep. There you go. That's a valuable insight. Mr. Know-It-All, you've been great. So good.
Have a good day.
You too. Thanks,
See everyone. Hope this helped. Bye.